from a wide stretch of geography, from Glenmorris to Grand Bend to Tobermory to Wyvale to Tottenham and everywhere in between. One thing that does connect us all is water. Our rivers and waterways connect us more thoroughly than our roads even do. It is a connection that runs deep in our relationship with this land. That water, that connection is something that we share with the first people of this land. The rivers and waterways have been used for transportation, as a lifeblood, as a connection to each other and to life itself for thousands of years. I know from my own history that I am but a newcomer to this land. I know and acknowledge that there were people here before my ancestors arrived. I acknowledge the pain, the hurt, the displacement that was deliberately caused to the first peoples of Canada. They say that water has memory, and it is my hope that the new memory being given to the waters of our regions that flow through our land is one of heartfelt reconciliation and deep commitment to working together for life of all. So I would invite you to use the chat over the next few minutes as we move into the beginning part of our meeting, to name the place where the water flows for you and the people who were there before you. If you wish to do that, I invite you to use the chat for that function. I believe that we are now going to, while you're typing that in, we're going to have a look at some of the different leadership that we have for this meeting. So our leadership team has quite a lot of people doing lots of different jobs that help to make this happen. And those are on the screen. I'll go through them just briefly. So Maggie Deecher is our equity team support member. Her job is helping to ensure that all voices are heard, that we do things in a equity manner, and to give us feedback after the meeting as well to for how we can improve in those areas in the future. Fred Monteith is serving as our parliamentarian. Terry Smith is our chair of agenda and business. I'm Mark, I'm your president. Cheryl Ann Stadl-Bowser-Sampa is our executive minister. Rod Coates is our minutes secretary. And Sue Doulaban is our executive assistant. And then we have some tech people with John and Michelle helping with that. So as you can see here, if you are having issues or technical concerns when videos are shown, don't send a chat message to the entire court. All of us are on the Zoom call as well. So if, for example, if John is sending a video, I'm also not going to be able to hear it. So we'll make sure that he knows what's going on. And if you are having difficulty with something as well, don't worry, we will be sharing all of this after the meeting as well. So we have some different musicians that are helping out in different ways. Tonight for our music, the musicians are coming from Drayton United Church with Mary Lou, Randy, and Rick giving us the music for our song this evening. So here's our brave commitment to community safety. And so we are striving in this time of co-learning to be brave by being accountable for the impact of both our words and our silence. I think that specifically raise that up this time as our theme for our meeting is Our Words Matter. We're reflecting on and naming our own biases, that we actively are listening, that we vocalize questions that arise from our learning, and that we're encountering new ideas with curiosity and with wonder. And so this is our Affirming Ministries vision statement that we share with the other regions in southwestern Ontario, where we share staff with Antler River Watershed and Horseshoe Falls. So safety, sanctuary, and unconditional love. Striving to be faithful followers of Jesus in our time and place, Western Ontario Waterways Regional Council will continue to remove barriers to participation in the life and work of the Regional Council and Society, committing ourselves to be open to the Spirit, Resisting all forms of oppression, we welcome and celebrate people of any sexual orientation and gender identity and all others who are marginalized. So if you do have some new business to bring forward, again, we ask that you don't use the chat for that. Here are the emails for Terry, our Chair of Agenda Business, or Cheryl Ann, our Executive Minister. And so just take a second if you think you're going to have new business to bring forward. Take a second to write one of those down. And if you need those later, send a private chat message to either Terry or Cheryl Ann in the chat, and they will get that for you. I think we are now moving into our opening and procedural motions. So I think I will pass this over to Terry now for this part.
Good evening, folks. What I want to do is draw your attention to a proposal motion that's in the workbooks on page 32 and 33 of the work that was sent out to you. This is a proposal that the Regional Council adopts the consent docket that was laid out. I want to point out that there is one addition to this proposal that was not in the workbook. It will be inserted just past item number 12, which sets the deadline for nominations at 10 a.m. Saturday, May 7th. And then everything else, all the numbering follows through after that. So we're moving into a vote on this, I think. Oh, yes. Does that, yeah, so open up a question for clarification or any other comments?
And please remember, if you have a question for clarification, to use the raise hand function that you can find in reactions or through the three dots. Me too.
So Sue has shared that motion that I was just referring to that's in the workbook. Again, it's on page 32 and 33 with the one addition of item number 13. And then the rest of the points go follow through after that. So the motion is actually on the floor. I'm making the motion. Cheryl Ann is the seconder of the motion. And then if there are no comments or questions, then we'll put it up for a vote.
I see we do have a question. We have a few questions. Dennis, can you unmute yourself and ask? So I'm not seeing any other questions. So can we have the poll brought up, please? And then you can click on the yes or no for voting.
I think we're already at the max there, Mark. So, okay, so that motion, we've got 83 people have voted, 83 people have voted yes. So that motion carries.
Perfect. And I think that was all.
I think that's it for me at this point.
Okay, thanks, Terry. I apologize for when we have times that we are, that it might be a little echoey. There's 5 of us in the room, and if 2 of us have our mics unmuted at the same time, it then becomes echoey. So it can be hard to have conversations. See, Sue just unmuted herself and you could see that happen. So when me and Terry have to talk at the same time, that might happen unless we're quicker on the button than what we were. So I apologize for that. We will try to be a bit quicker on that in the future. We are now, I believe, going to move into our time of worship for this evening. For our worship this evening, I had asked Joyce Johnson to help lead our worship, and she was unable to be here in person as she is at the Native Peoples Retreat this weekend. But we did get together prior to here, and she was very gracious in recording a prayer for us. And so we will now, oh, she's also going to do a scripture reading, I believe. So if we can have that video. Just to note, the video is a little bit choppy when we recorded it. Her internet was a little bit unstable. The sound should be fine, but just the picture might be a little bit off. Thank you.
Greetings, everybody. I am really regretting the fact that I can't be with you this evening. But I'd like to do the prayer as I've been asked to help with this service. So here we go. I'd like to read a little bit from John chapter 1, because part of this whole exercise is about words. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him, not anything made that was made. So words are very important to all of us. They matter in every relationship that we have, in our personal relationships, and especially in our relationship with one another as we work towards serving God. So I have written this little prayer for you and hopefully with you. So please join me. Creator God, we come today hearts filled with gratitude and much love for all the things that you have created in this world of ours. We give thanks for this new season in the natural world, when everything is blooming again. All the things that went to sleep in the winter are awakening up in the spring. We give thanks for all the parts of your creation that have been given a purpose and a responsibility. The sun, the moon, the heavens, the rains, the stars, the earth, the many waters, the mountains, the valleys, and all of the life forms that exist on Mother Earth, above and below it, and for the gift of your word. Creator God, we say miigwech for the gifts of words in so many languages. We know that we have a responsibility to use our words in a caring and responsible way, and in most situations with purpose. We know that when we speak these words, we use our tone of voice as also a tool to deliver the word. We notice that when we speak to the babies, our voice changes and it's filled with love and caring. We notice that when we're talking to our teenagers about turning off the lights or putting away their technical equipment. We notice that when we're talking to the people in our life who are really important, our partners. So we use our voice in many ways. Sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's soft, sometimes it's gentle, and sometimes it's not so gentle. But we try to speak with purpose to the people that we're speaking to. We notice that when we're given a sermon, we have a much more solemn way of speaking words, of trying to deliver the message that we feel God has sort of guided us to share with one another. So we are grateful for all the words, especially those that we use in song, in the expression of our ideas, especially those that are filled with passion. And we want so badly to communicate our ideals to each other. Creator God, help us to be mindful of the power that words have and to be aware of our responsibility to use them respectfully. Help us, God, to use our words to build stronger relationships and to build communities where everyone matters. That is so important, especially in today's world, because we speak to people whose maybe first language is not English. And so we have to work really hard, extra hard, to try to use words that will mean something to them. And sometimes to reframe our thoughts over and over again so that our ideas are clear. Creator God, we give thanks for this time together. We ask for your guidance to help us to hear each other without judgment, but with open minds and open hearts. Creator, as we spend these moments together, please bless our intentions to remain ever faithful and ever mindful of your word. Love one another as I have loved you. We ask this humbly to the love of the risen Christ. Amen. Miigwech.
So once again, I want to thank Joyce for leading us in that time of prayer and scripture. And we are now going to have a time of song. As we were talking about words, and Joyce and I wanted to use our words in our opening worship to be ones of welcome to this meeting. And so we'll have a little activity after this, but first let us sing a song that sings of welcome. So for our words of welcome, that we wanted to talk about at this time for the worship. As I'm sure we all remember from times when we were meeting in person, when we have new people that had just joined the regional council, or I guess at that point it would have been presbytery or conference, we would welcome them by having someone stand up and wave their hand and then welcome them to the space. We can't quite do it the same way here, but we have a raise hand feature. So if this is your first regional council meeting with WOW, or if it is, then please raise your hand, and I'd like you to introduce yourself to us so that we can welcome you to this space. So I'll be calling on you, so if you can unmute yourself, and if you could just say your name and then say what community of faith you are from, as that's a good way to be working as we go through the meeting so that we can get to know each other a little bit. This is great. We got lots. Yan Hee, I'll invite you to go first.
My name is Yuni. I am serving Erin United Church in Erin, and I have been joined my husband, an Anglican priest, for 5 years. Now I back to United Church of Canada. Since I come back, oh my gosh, everything changed. So I almost lost, but I get back to the right way. Thank you. I'm very happy to see you all.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, we're glad you found your way to this space this time. No, things have definitely changed in the United Church in the last 5 years. I think that's one of the biggest understatements of said. Thank you so much and welcome. Tina.
Hi, I'm Tina Otika, and I belong to the Lakeshore United Church of Canada in Goderich. And I am actually from the States and have only lived in Canada about 4 years. So it's pretty exciting for me to join the United Church of Canada and to join in this process. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, welcome to this and to the country as well. That's excellent. Thank you. Bobby?
Yes, I met Pastor Mark Rutledge in Cambridge. I guess about 7 years ago. I needed to rent his hall for a political meeting. And I decided I would go to the church and listen to Mark. And I was enamored and very impressed with his message. And I got quite involved in the church for a while. And I'm really impressed with the level of activity. This is Trillium United, if I didn't say that already, in Cambridge, Preston, Cambridge. And I'm very happy to join my dear friend, Doug Stewart, who I know has been in this group for a while. So thank you. I'm very pleased to be here and nice to meet you all.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, welcome,
Thank you.
Bobby.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here as well. Jeremy.
I'm Jeremy Allen. I'm part of Westminster United in Waterloo. I'm husband to Reverend Andrea Allen, and Uni, you probably don't remember me, but you were one of the ministers at Calvary Memorial when I was a member there for many, many years in Kitchener. So as a spouse of a minister, I can't really be on too many committees and things like that. So I thought this would be a great way to help out.
Excellent. Well, welcome, Jeremy. We're glad to have. So who's doing childcare if you're both on the meeting? That's the real challenge.
I don't think he's named in the mail.
The trampoline / phone / Xbox.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Welcome. Happy to have you. Peter.
Yes, I'm glad to be here. I'm Peter from Trinity United in Elmira. And I wanted to get back into a regional type of situation. So I'm representing Trinity, not only as a WOW representative, but I'm also the chair of the development the committee. I've been at Trinity now for almost, from Toronto, We've moved up here about 11 years ago, and the first minister I associated with was Dave Jagger.
I'm sorry about that.
Anyway, and he actually is the one who said that God must have been shining on Trinity, because I had just finished up at Humberville, and he says, well, we've got a project for you. Guess what? Took us 7 years, almost 8, to get to the point where we are now, but I'm really glad to be here, and I hope to be able to help out on the property side.
That's excellent. Yeah, I heard you talking to Anne at the beginning of the meeting, and I can guarantee you, I know Anne, and she will have your contact information ready to go to be called on. So that is excellent.
So,
welcome.
I'm glad to be with you.
Well, we're glad to have you as well, and welcome to our meeting tonight. Russell, I believe.
Hi, Russell Wardell. I'm recently retired United Church minister. I served many years in Manitoba, but finished up in the Ottawa area. I've chosen to retire in Guelph, and I'm attending Dublin Street United. So it's great to join you for the first time.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Welcome to our meeting today. Mary? Yeah, you're perfect.
Can you
You're
hear
good.
me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm attending Knox United in Ayr, and when I was chair of the board and then past chair, and I wanted to have something still to remain on the board, and they suggested representative to WOW. So here I am. This is totally new for me, and I'm very interested in the process and what goes on in the United Church. So yeah, this is interesting. This will be interesting.
Good. Well,
Thank
welcome. This is the regional council thing is new for a lot of us as well. I think we're only 4 years in, so we're all learning still as we go. But we're pleased to have you here with us, Mary. Thank you for joining. Karen.
Hi, my name is Karen Cartmel. I currently live in Waterloo, Ontario. I moved here from Saskatchewan. It was the Living Skies regional council there, and I'm a licensed lay worship leader. So out west, I was really, really busy, because that's what they really depend on the LLWLs out there. So I'm not quite sure where I'm going to fit in here now that I'm in Waterloo. So
we will find a place for you. I can guarantee that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for saying that, and welcome, Karen. Welcome to everyone who is here. If this is your first time, or if you've been here many times before, we welcome you all. Our meeting would take up too much space to go one by one to introduce everybody. But we're hoping that at our camp day we'll have more opportunity to get to know each other a little bit more in our region. So welcome, one and all. Thank you for doing that. I know sometimes being a new person in a group, it can be a little nerve-wracking to speak and to put your hand up. Sometimes it's easier when the person who brought you to the meeting is the one saying, here's the new person right here. So thank you for taking the time to do that. That was a lot of fun.
President Mark, if I might just say for a moment, if any of the new people have any questions, they could reach me at the chat under Executive Minister Cheryl Lane, and I'll do my best to support them.
Perfect. That sounds absolutely wonderful. Yeah, if anyone has any questions or anything, sending it to Cheryl Ann as opposed, you can send it to me, but I don't necessarily can't monitor the chat depending on what else is going on in the meeting. I've caught a few so far today, so that's good. Yeah, will be more than happy to help out. The nice thing for this meeting, if this is your first one, is we actually don't have a lot of business at this meeting. We have moved into the format of having 2 meetings. Normally, if we were in the conference, you remember there would be 1 annual meeting. We've moved to, partially I think because of COVID, but also because of a new way of doing things. So to try things differently, we have a spring meeting and a fall meeting, which is nice because it means it allows us to spread out our business a little bit and can have certain things devoted to one meeting and certain things to another. And so this meeting, we're really fortunate that we actually have a lot of educational pieces and a lot of learning to do together, which is still our work in the region. Our business is not just approving budgets and doing that sort of thing. Our business is to learn and grow and support, transform, and connect with each other as a regional council as well. And so I'm very pleased that this meeting is going to give us some of that time. And so speaking of that, that kind of closes out what we had planned for our worship, and we are going to move into our first learning session for the weekend. Pretty much for the rest of this evening is going to be focused on this learning session as we look at the word mission and how that has been used and is used today, and maybe some of the challenges that come with that. So I'd like to introduce Thérèse Samuel, who is our Minister for Right Relations and Social Justice. She does that for all 3 regions in our area. So if you are new to our regional council, because we have a smaller geographical space in southwestern Ontario than perhaps all of Saskatchewan, we share some of our staff with other regional councils in southwestern Ontario. And so Thérèse is one of those staff that gives her time to us and also to Antler River Watershed and Horseshoe Falls Regional Council as well. And so along with Thérèse, we also have Teresa Burnett-Cole, who is also going to be presenting for us for the rest of the day. And so we welcome you, Teresa. Teresa is a minister in Ottawa at Glebe St. James, I think, correct? And has done this sort of work at the general council level. That's the word I wanted, as well. So we're very pleased to have her leadership in this as well. And I just wanted to, as we start, Teresa, I wanted to just let you, this is so awkward doing this over Zoom. I wish we were in person because this sort of thing makes it so much easier. But I do have some tobacco to offer you with Thanksgiving from the creator for this learning that we're going to have today. And I have a little gift basket. You can't really, I don't want to tip it because you won't see, but it's all locally made food. All of it is made within about 30 kilometers of my house. So there's some maple syrup and jam, there's some honey and a beeswax candle and that sort of thing. And so I believe Thérèse is going to see you later on, and she will be bringing that as part of our, and with the tobacco tie as well, as part of our appreciation for your leadership tonight. So I will turn it over to the two of you.
Thank you, President Mark. We start out, as is protocol, by acknowledging the territory, and Teresa and I will each share a little bit about ourselves within the context of this conversation. So my name is Thérèse Samuel. I live on the territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, Treaty 18 of 1818, but I am currently coming to you from the Haldeman Tract, a short walk away from the Grand River. Some of what I have learned about this land that I am visiting is that the Crown promised the land for 6 miles on either side of the Grand River to the nations of 6 nations of the Grand River. So the fact that I am sitting in a house in a neighborhood in a city called Brantford is evidence of a breaking of that promise. I am grateful for the peoples for whom this is their traditional territory and who have cared for this territory from time immemorial. I lament the brokenness that is at the heart of our current presence on this land, and I pray for just and good and right relationships to be forged out of what we do now, what we do. And I offer myself to the Creator's dream of peace and plenty of respect and resources equally shared for all of creation and all peoples and their place being honored and respected. I am non-Indigenous in this land. My family comes from the Caribbean with a racial mixture going back generations on both sides of the family. On Turtle Island, I primarily identify as Black, but my ancestry is mixed of European and African and Carib and other Indigenous peoples from South America and the Caribbean. My family in the Caribbean have a tremendous amount of privilege and lean heavily on our European ancestry, but there is always awareness of our African and Indigenous roots. Here on Turtle Island, I experience colonialism and racism and power and privilege in some ways that are similar to and some ways that are different from what I experience in Trinidad. And here, sometimes in conversations with Indigenous individuals, we find some ways that our experiences of colonization and cultural perspectives are similar, but in many other ways, my perspectives and my place in the web of power and privilege and oppression in this land are very different. I am a settler of color. So in tonight's conversation, my perspective as I speak may shift at times from being a person of a wider grouping of BIPOC peoples, Black, Indigenous, and other peoples of color, to identifying as a settler person and identifying as a Black person of mixed race ancestry. Sometimes when I say we and us, it will include other settlers who are white. Sometimes my we and us will include other Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Sometimes my we and us includes other peoples of African descent. And sometimes my we and us includes everybody who is part of the church. And I invite Teresa to.
Well, thank you. And it's good to be with WOW. My name is Teresa Burnett-Cole. My Indigenous name is Skonandum, which means clear mind. I have the privilege of living and working on the unceded land of the Algonquin Nations in Ottawa. I find it painfully ironic that our nation's capital, with its iconic Parliament building and Peace Tower, is built on unsurrendered land. I also work and play in the Ottawa River watershed, known as Kitchazibi. That's a river system that brings fresh water to the city of Ottawa, but it also leaves the Algonquin Nation of Kitchazibi with a long-standing water advisory. So I am really aware of the environmental racism that we experience in this area. Like everyone else, I inhabit an intersectional space. That is, my identity is made up of a lot of things. I am a wife to a same-sex spouse. I'm a two-spirit person. I'm an artist, a musician, and primarily a liturgist. I walk between racial identities of being Mohawk, Scottish, and Irish. The joke in my family is that we're all clan people. I was raised in the settler world, which means I've had educational and social opportunities that I am clear I would not have been possible if I had been raised on reserve. And while this has had benefits for me, there has also been serious ruptures that have damaged my family and their knowledge of their Mohawk culture. Finally, I am a United Church minister working in congregational ministry. In the course of the 20 years, I've served rural and urban, Indigenous and settler congregations. At the present time, I serve a settler congregation of Glebe St. James, which is a large urban church in downtown Ottawa. I also serve as the Indigenous rep on the General Council Executive and as a member of the National Indigenous Council. I am deeply committed to the strengthening of a strong, independent, spiritually grounded Indigenous United Church. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Teresa, and welcome. It is a blessing to have you here. And I'm going to now share a little bit about an introduction to the conversation that we're going to have, starting with the agenda, just so you can see how this will unfold. The first thing I'll do after sharing the agenda will be to introduce the respectful communication guidelines. And then as the session unfolds, you'll have opportunities to listen and reflect and listen and reflect. Teresa and I will share on how this issue came to our attention, and I see a spelling error came to our attention, including the attention of the region and general council. That will be some significant sharing, and we'll have a brief break after that, and then we will come back for some breakout group activities. You will be invited to reflect and listen, and then we'll have large group activity, some time to listen as Teresa shares a little bit more, and then another opportunity for a breakout group activity. And then we'll come back together to reflect on the word cloud activity in a large group. And then we will close with some closing thoughts and prayer. There we go. So we're going to have a couple of breakout groups, and I'm going to invite you in the breakout groups to remember these respectful communication guidelines. These are called communication guidelines, but I have found them to be skills that we need to use when we're engaging in conversation across difference, whether it be across different cultures, races, genders, different power levels, and different perspectives or opinions. So some of you may know these guidelines. I will go through them very briefly. It starts with the R, which is taking responsibility for what you say and feel without blaming others. When we hear someone say something that we're not happy with, to take ownership of that is one example, and to use I statements. Using empathetic listening. Again, it's important to pause and listen through as much as you can through the other person's ears, to feel through their heart, to walk in their shoes or to sit in their chair, to get a sense of where they're coming from. Being sensitive to differences in communication style. Some people share in stories. Some people spiral around a point until they get to it. Some people speak very directly from point to point to point. Some people use silence, and this can be a cultural thing. Some of us use silence in different ways. Some use silence to say that we agree. Some use silence as an indication that we disagree. And so in your groups, you'll probably spend more time listening than speaking, and that sensitivity will be important. Key is to ponder what you hear and feel before you speak. And if you have a pen or another window open that you can take notes while you're listening, that can help you to ponder rather than just speaking. E is to examine your own assumptions and perceptions, and sometimes those don't come to awareness until we hear from somebody who has a different perspective. C, keep confidentiality, which is sharing constructively to uphold the well-being of the community. And so as in other gatherings that you may have been in, when you hear someone story, sharing their perspectives. You might want to share that with someone else, but don't share it unless you first ask permission of the person whose story it is, because our stories are sacred. They're part of who we are and they're part of our journey. And that power to share the story really needs to rest with the person whose story it is. And T is to trust ambiguity, because we're not here to debate who is right and who is wrong. Something we never come across this in the church, do we? Different opinions. It's the spice of life. And so just to, if we can let go of the desire to have other people think the way we think and listen openly and share honestly. I'm not going to ask for agreement to the respectful guidelines right now, because when you go into breakout groups, I will take your going into accepting to join the group as your adoption of the respectful guidelines. And does anybody have any questions or anything that you really need when you are I apologize. There are young people in the space. I see that there's a note that there's noise in the background. So they are being as quiet as young people can be. And any other things that you need to be able to participate in this time? If you can type it in the chat, or if you don't know how, aren't able to use the chat, you can put up your hand. Seeing none, I will move on ahead. So a little bit about how the issue that we're dealing with and how it came to my attention and our attention in the region. Mission is a word that started in the church, but seems to be everywhere. I didn't think about the definition of mission until about a year ago, when I was asked to describe what mission and discipleship meant to me. And I admit that I had a difficult time coming up with a definition of mission. I had learned that missional ministry was ministry that focused on the outside of the church, connecting with others. But when I tried to define mission and discipleship, I knew what discipleship was. It's following Jesus. And really for me, mission was just kind of how we live our discipleship outside of the church, with other people and peoples and in creation. I was very conscious of trying to steer clear of the notion of mission as being taking control, taking away from other people's faith and making them be like us. And that made it hard, I think, for me to define mission. And then in the fall, I had a Zoom virtual background, and that said mission and discipleship. And I had it on for a brief moment when I was meeting with an Indigenous elder. And at one point he said to me, so you know, that word that was on your screen before, what mission, what does that mean to you? And I described what my understanding was. And he told me how it has been a difficult word for many Indigenous peoples. He also pointed out that it's not biblical, that it first came out in times of the Inquisition. It felt like what he said helped to put some context to my own discomfort and confusion with the word. And I didn't doubt him, but I felt like I needed to go and do some research of my own. I found out that the word mission first began to be used in the 1500s in the church. Then I looked to the Bible. I went into BibleGateway.com and searched for the word mission in the New Revised Standard Version. And it turns out that in the New Testament, the word mission only comes up once in Acts, when Paul is talking about Paul and Silas completing their mission and returning to Jerusalem. And it is used in headings in sections such as Mission of the 70, but those are added by the translators. They're not words in the original language. A couple of passages in the Old Testament used it in reference to a military mission, and one in sending out spies to check out a land. So what about the King James Version? Surely it was in there more. So I searched the King James Version and discovered that the word mission is used there a total of 0 times. It does not appear. That surprised me because it is used so much across Christianity. A few weeks later, I learned that Indigenous leaders had brought the question of the use of the word mission by General Counsel in a new visioning statement. And then about the same time, a regional staff member who had been uncomfortable with the negative associations of the word mission also heard the concerns once again arising from Indigenous leaders within the United Church. And you'll hear some more about that from Teresa as she shares. In consultation with some of those leaders, my colleague brought it to the attention of the chairs of the 3 regions in southwestern Ontario, including Western Ontario Waterways. And as a result, the conversation that we are bringing today has emerged, and a similar session will be held in the other 2 regions. As we embark on this conversation, let us be mindful that it is about our faith and our faithful following of the one we know as the Christ. Speaking from my own perspective, when I have shared with about challenges that I have encountered as a person of color in the church structures, hurts that I have absorbed as a person of color, sometimes a white person in the church has asked me, well, why would you even be part of the church if that's your experience? My answer is faith. I am here, and I would guess that most of us are here because of faith, because of God, because of a love that is above all and in all and through all, because of Christ who has made this love known, and the Spirit who is the power of love. There's something deep and rich and true at the core of our faith. I've heard and seen that reflected in the faithful presence of Indigenous peoples who are part of the church, who remain part of the church even amidst pain and challenges that they share, amidst oppression and obstacles that they share and they speak of, and sometimes the rest of the church listens. This is one of those times for us to listen. I think that for those of us who are non-Indigenous in the church, this is a chance for us to be reminded of the core of our faith. When we engage our faith well, our focus is turned toward that goodness, richness, and truth. The beginning of John's Gospel reads, and it's interesting because I had these words prepared, and then when I heard Joyce Johnston speak them in the prayer time, it just felt much more relevant. The beginning of John's Gospel reads, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. Through him all things have come into being, and without him not one thing has come into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. Friends, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. And by light and darkness, we're not talking about the shades of our skin. We are talking about the love that shines in the shadows. Our church's use of faith has sometimes cast a presence that leaves a shadow, but that love has always been there. That this conversation brings to our attention one of these shadows. And as we are called to notice this shadow, let us be mindful of the love that makes it a shadow. The love shines in the shadow, and the shadow did not overcome it. At this point, as Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples gathered together, we are called to listen and reflect and to listen some more, that the Spirit may speak in our midst. And I invite the Reverend Teresa Burnett-Cole to share from her perspective.
Thank you, Thérèse. So when we talked, Thérèse said, tell me, how did this unfold at the General Council executive level? How did this conversation impact us going forward? And I got to tell you, this topic has been an ongoing conversation in the Indigenous Church. It is not just a historic issue. It remains contemporary and problematic. It regularly comes up in meetings of the National Indigenous Council and at the National Indigenous Spiritual Gathering, which is the Indigenous equivalent of the General Council. Here's the problem. Mission has been a painful issue or problem since long before the formation of the General Council. In fact, long before the formation of the United Church of Canada, our predecessors in the Methodist and Presbyterian churches were quite active in missions to Indians. And they did this in the territory that would now become known as Canada. In your area, the area of Western Ontario Waterways Regional Council, the majority of missionaries were American or British Methodists, with a few Moravians thrown in for good measure. Indigenous churches were established in several Indigenous communities. And just to make matters complicated, much of the missionary work was actually done by Indigenous evangelists. So it was Indigenous people sharing the news with Indigenous people, but they worked under the supervision of a settler Methodist minister. Most of the missionary work in this area happened between about 1820 to 1850. So when United Church Union happened in 1925, most of these churches were close to 100 years old with a deep history in their communities. But the founding denominations didn't consider these full churches. Though they had the same structure as settler churches, they were only considered missions, a direct result of their being Indigenous. And when union happened, these churches were not consulted like settler churches. Instead, they were moved as a group into the United Church. In fact, some of these churches didn't know that upon union, their trusteeships had been dissolved, and they were now under the guardianship of the Home Missions Unit. What that meant was that their buildings were now part of the national stock of property and would be managed from a distance. Now, of course, residential schools were in full swing by this time, and there were all kinds of restrictions on Indigenous people that really made them second-class citizens in both Canada and the United Church. If you are not aware of this history, I would strongly encourage you to reach out. I know Teresa and your social justice person, Diane, would have lots of resources for you to consult. This is the background you need to know if you're going to understand the lack of trust that the Indigenous Church has, for the most part, in the United Church of Canada. And friends, we have a good reason to be mistrustful. I was at a conference recently, and there was a line used that has just stuck in my head. And that is, we can only move at the speed of trust. We can only move at the speed of trust. We need to build relationships, trust relationships between Indigenous and settler communities if this is going to work. When the new branding campaign at the General Council office came about, and if you haven't heard, the tagline is deep spirituality, bold discipleship, and daring justice. And when it was announced, there were about 5 or 6 different components. And one of the major ones was labeled mission. And the Indigenous leadership responded with a clear, hell no reaction. As the Indigenous representative, I stopped the conversation at the General Council Executive, and I pointed out the harm that had happened in the name of Christian mission. It was an interesting day to be in the church court as member after member of the GCE concurred. In particular, the racialized members spoke eloquently about how their people too had been harmed by this concept. Mission is more than just a word. It's a short form for an entire system of colonization that's wreaked havoc here in Canada and around the world. And it was interesting in the court that day. The moderator and the general secretary were listening very attentively, and I could see the expression on their face as they came to comprehend the breadth of the problem. And it was absolutely priceless. General Secretary Michael Blair threw up his hands and said, "This is huge. We will have to look at everything, from the basis of union to the manual. This is a major undertaking." And friends, he was right. The work is just beginning. The first order of business was to understand the scope of the project. The General Council office is working to divide this work into measurable and achievable components. There's going to be a lot more happening on this file. Quite frankly, it's on hold, really, until the conclusion of the General Council, because General Council 44 has taken up a little bit of energy, if you know what I mean. What I'm gratified to tell you is that there is no one on the General Council executive or among the senior staff who disagreed that this was an essential theological and ecclesiological task. It is an essential part of what it means to be in right relationship, perhaps for the first time in the long relationship between the Indigenous and settler churches. This work is an important step in understanding, and it makes me hopeful that we might actually be allies in this effort. The sad truth is, our church remains plagued with racism and anti-Indigenous sentiment. Some see the damage wrought in our communities and are pessimistic that change is even possible. Remember that this damage has clear roots in the legacy of residential schools, governmental apartheid, and the lack of adherence to treaties made with Indigenous people across Canada. And the churches, as deeply tied to the colonial project, we share responsibility for this damage. And it's essential that we listen deeply to what the Indigenous members of the church are saying. The first step in reconciliation is getting to know the neighbors. Reconciliation requires relationship. As long as, just before COVID, when General Council Executive met for the last time in person, we were asked to talk about reparations. And the Indigenous folks at the meeting realized we couldn't begin the conversation of reparations because we weren't clear that the General Council Executive understood that reconciliation requires relationship. And basically, what I would want you to understand is We can't be friends unless you know both my joys and my sorrows, and I know yours. Until you know who the Creator has made Indigenous people to be, we can't make further steps to being church together. So ask questions. Get to know your neighbors. And friends, go to them. Don't expect them to come to you. And listen. Listen deeply to what they were saying. And ask questions. Ask questions of the General Counsel. Ask questions of the General Counsel office. Ask questions of the General Counsel executive. Commissioners to General Counsel 44, hold the court accountable. Hold the court accountable for the language that we use. The more we put issues like missions before the church, the better it's going to be for all of us. So watch this space, keep us accountable, because friends, the stakes are too high to ignore. Over to you, Teresa.
I'm just taking a moment to breathe in and out and receive the wisdom and the encouragement and the challenge that you have shared. Thank you. And now is a good time for us to take a bit of a break to stretch our legs. I've got 7:16 p.m. So if we come back at 7:25, that will give us 10 minutes for a break. And when we come back, you can try to come back right on time or maybe a minute or two early because we will shortly after we get back together, we'll be going into some breakout group discussions. So we'll be introducing that right after the break.
Perfect. Thank you, Teresa. And if you are going, I encourage you to, just as Teresa just did, to stop your video, or we'll just see you all, everyone walking around. So you can turn your video off, and then when you turn it back on, when you come back, that's a way that we know you are back. So take some time to stretch.
Welcome back. So I'm going to ask if I can be spotlighted again, and I've got 7:25, so we'll get going once that's done. There we go. So there are breakout groups prepared for you to go into. Hang on a second. I shared the wrong screen. This should work. And a reminder that your agreement to the respect guidelines, oops, I went the wrong way. That's why that was going there. Will be you're accepting going into breakout group. So in your breakout group, the main question is what the word mission has meant to you. And I will ask if one of the tech hosts can plop that, what's on this slide, into the chat so that you will have it when you go into the breakout group. So what the word mission has meant to me. Your task is to share if you wish and to listen. As always, sharing is optional, listening is not. And we invite you in these groups because our conversation has to do with Indigenous justice. I invite you to privilege Indigenous voices. So invite people who identify as Indigenous the option to speak first, because you might not know who identifies as Indigenous. That will be your first order of business in the group, to extend that invitation that if somebody is Indigenous, for them to share first. And if someone does, then extend that invitation again, just in case someone else there is Indigenous. And if you have time for everybody to share, after all who wish to share, just take a moment to notice what similarities and differences among your small groups impressions of mission are revealed in the sharing. You're not going to be asked to report back, so nobody needs to take notes. Our activity will follow on this one when you get back into the full group, but you don't need to take notes. Any questions? Seeing no hands raised and no chat questions, then I will ask that the respectful guidelines, just to remind you of the respectful communication guidelines, those can be also copied and pasted into the chat by one of the tech hosts. And once that is there, then you can go into the breakout groups.
Teresa, this is President Mark. Those respectful guidelines are in there already. They got put in a little bit before. Oh,
yes,
they're there again now.
And I will ask them for them to be put in each time, because I know that if people drop off the meeting for any reason and come back, or if they come in late, they will not have access to the chat before they arrived. So we will just put it in the chat each time.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you'll have 15 minutes, 14 minutes, and then a 1-minute timer countdown.
Yeah, think about what mission, when you hear the word mission or missionary, what does that hold for you? You know?
Welcome back, friends. It looks like everybody has joined us again. I trust that you had some rich sharing in your groups once you got there. Did I? I'm not muted, am I?
No.
It just no. Prompted me to unmute myself, but it looked like I was unmuted. Not sure what that is about. Okay. So
from Cambridge, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So now that in the big group, what we're going to invite you to is to share, first of all, using the chat function if you're able to. If not, then we would invite you to raise your hand and voice your response. To share what aspects of your current or past understanding of mission you would like to let go of. So you can, some of you might want to take a few moments to reflect on that. And so I see, let go of the idea that we have the answers and we will come to you. I need to make my chat screen bigger. If one of the other hosts or President Mark is able to, you can just kind of help us highlight some of the sharing that has come, particularly for people that are on the phone. They won't be able to read the chat. So does this question not assume that we all have the same understanding of mission? One-way relationship, let go of the word and focus on discipleship, the feeling of power over, let go of the idea that it is something positive for everyone.
And then I'd like to let go of the idea that mission equals missionary. Let go of denomination.
Domination.
Domination, thank you. Let go of the idea that missions is often intended to make the giver feel good, regardless of how the recipient may feel. Gifts can be rejected, and that is just fine. The imbalance, giver and receiver of mission, rather than shared endeavor. Replace mission with the word ministry.
Someone else says, I'd like to let go of the idea that missions were done for and to others, letting go of the notion of people being other. Let go of the idea that mission involves money. I notice that there's some background noise here, so I'm going to mute. And Mark, you're doing a great job. If you, President Mark, if you can continue, that would be great.
No problem. Make me rethink mission and service as opposed to outreach and service. Connected of mission to connection of mission to conversation. Unpack the colonial history connected to the word. To enforce my concept of my mission on others, regardless of their perspective. Give up the word because for many people, the word has hurtful connotations of colonization and being second-class people. Watch my fear and resentment to change. What we are called to rather than what is my mission.
And I see that Maydith has her hand up. So Maydith, you can unmute and share.
Thank you, Teresa. I would like to answer this question, but I find it somewhat exclusive. I find that it says, what aspects of your current or past understanding would you like to let go of? I don't know that I'd like to let go of anything. What I'd like to see is the understanding shared by Teresa included, or the word mission, put an X to and disappear. Because for me, as a racialized person, it's a demeaning term. Many churches see me as their mission. Anti-racism is their mission, or, Indigenous people are their mission. Missionaries have, demeaned, humiliated, just, colonized, racialized people. So for me, there is no I would like to see the word mission disappear. Even now, if you look on the United Church website on their mission and service page, it's all about how we are going out to make people's lives better. So still as a church, we see ourselves as better than the people we serve.
Thank you, Maydith, for sharing that. And I'm going to move us to the next one. We've got one more of these chat activities. Oops, hang on. Oh, is that there? Oh, did I might not have it there. So the next question is, what would you like to hold on to? What would you like to hold on to? So just using the same process. And I'm going to take this off the screen because it's not helping us right now.
So you would like us in the breakout rooms again?
No, it's okay. The same. Sorry, it's not breakout groups yet. It's a chance to ask the other side of that question that we just reflected on. So what of the word mission would you like to hold on to? What of your understanding of mission, if anything, and there might not be, as we heard. Loving others unconditionally, sense of engagement with the world, sense of calling to help each other, compassion and love for all, collaboration. Mission has also been tied with vocation and calling. I hope our calling is a good thing. The sense of calling to help each other, compassion and love for all, collaboration. Mission has also been tied with, an invitation to, it's hard to hold it there. I'm going to try to read what I can. Hang on to a sense of engagement and collaboration to do good. I think that is sharing with and working together. We are called to share love in the world and work for justice. Hold on to the idea of responding to requests from mission partners in quotation marks, to know what our directive as Christians are, to love and respect one another, and most of all, to listen. The idea of creativity, hold on to the idea of mission as the unfolding, healing work of God in the world that takes many forms. Also the field of study in the wider church of missiology, outward focus and relationship. Not mission, but purpose for building relationships, caring for people, for all people. It may not be a redeemable word, but I would want to hold on to the sense of unconditional love for all. Empathy and compassion. I'm going to invite President Mark, if you can continue.
No problem. To do good, having a purpose as a disciple of Christ, the importance of action from faith or with faith, to love our neighbors, hold on to respect. The idea is that church ministry isn't only in our buildings or known groups, to share, to live with respect for our neighbors, engagement as partners. I like the purpose more so than mission. We, not me. Not what can I do for someone, but with someone. And I think there were a couple at the beginning I'm trying to go back to that we missed. Hold on to loving others unconditionally, desire to share and care for others, the idea of service for others, to love and serve others. It looks like we're at the end of the chat, Therese. Maintain a communal vocabulary with ecumenical partners.
Thank you for all of that. And if you want to hang on to and review what people have shared, you can save the chat and look at it after. And I will invite Teresa. Teresa, it's so wonderful to have you here and sharing with us. It is such a gift. Thank you. And I know that Teresa has some more words to take us into the next breakout groups.
Okay. Well, language is interesting, isn't it? Words matter. A professor of mine used to say that language forms and informs. Language forms and informs. By which she meant that language both describes a reality and helps that reality into being. So think about, just as an example, the concept of peace. We say in worship, peace be with you. And I mean, think back before COVID. Do you remember the sign of peace? Yeah. And, you know, if you say it glibly, you know, peace be with you, peace be with you, peace be with you, it means nothing, right? But if you stop and look a person in the eye as you say it and think about what it really means, slowly one experiences a heart shift, right? Saying peace leads to being peaceful and hopefully leads to peace-filled acts. Language forms and informs. The concept of mission is like that too, eh? It contains both the story of the spread of Christianity from person to person down through the ages. And we could think of that as God's love letter. And then there's the colonial envelope that we wrap that love story in. The colonization that destroyed peoples and cultures, not just Indigenous people here in Canada, but globally. You know, the letter, the love letter from God, and the envelope. What language could we use to keep the good of the word mission as God's love letter to the world while tossing that envelope, which we've traditionally wrapped it in? Something to think about.
So we will try the breakout groups again. I'm just going to move my screen. So the question is, can you find a different word? Can you use a different word or words other than mission to express what you would like to keep from your current or past understanding of mission, or what you would like to replace the sense of mission? Once again, in your breakout groups, privilege Indigenous voices by inviting Indigenous voices to speak first if they wish. As always, sharing is optional. And remember the respectful communication guidelines. And I will ask they have appeared. So are we ready to go into the breakout groups? I'm going to stop sharing.
I sure hope so. We will be trying to send you back into the same groups that you were in before. I realize that a couple of those groups only had a couple of people, and apologize for that, but hopefully it just allows you to have a more intimate conversation with a couple of you there. So let's see if this works. I think I have it set up that you will have, it'll be 14 minutes and then a 1 minute cool down to come back this time. Let's try.
So I have just screen shared something. What you will be invited to share by going to Menti, don't do that quite yet, is some of the different words that you might use to express what to keep from your current or past understanding of the word mission, or to replace the sense of mission. So what words would you potentially use in the place? Think of the places in the church where we use the word mission. This is just like a little bit of a brainstorming. And when you go to Menti, if you got a phone and know how to use the QR code, you can do that. I learned how to do that in restaurants during COVID, so you might be able to as well. Or you can go to menti.com, and I'm not sure if it's been put into the chat, but if it hasn't, I'll ask if that can be put into the chat. I see some hearts saying that people have arrived there. And so please just input the words there. You're able to put up to 10 on 10 different lines at a time. It can be more than one word per line. It tells you how many characters you have left in what you are putting in, I believe. Still see the screen. When you've typed in your words and entered them, they will appear. The more often a word is used, the bigger it will be. And this, so we can see and receive what one another has to share.
This is so cool.
Could you maybe put the QR code back up?
I believe I can.
Thank you.
Let's see. Yep.
There we go.
The link is also in the chat, that you can just click on the link in the chat if you're using a computer, and it'll take you to that site that way as well.
And you will need to input the code.
Yep, which is
the
also
number that's there, that's in the chat as well. Yeah. Easier for some than others.
For sure.
Let's see where it's at.
We're picking up the ones from the chat as well, so don't worry. If it's in the chat, we've got it.
Yes, thank you.
Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. I'd forgotten to mention that if you have trouble with that, the menti.com, you can put it in the chat, and they will be put into the word cloud.
And Teresa, the word cloud will be able to share with people as part of our post-meeting materials?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Is from your conversation that you were talking about earlier, this is what we did this sort of thing at the fall meeting with the mission and discipleship, and that's how you got that word cloud that then led to this discussion.
Yes.
So it'll be great to see how this then carries us on in the future as well.